Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Speaker Series event. I'm Margaret Ioannidis, the Associate Dean of Strategy and Innovation at Florida Coastal School of Law, and with me today is one of our Logistics and Transportation professors, Doug Helsing. Professor Helsing teaches administrative law for transportation professionals in Florida Coastal School of Law's online Logistics and Transportation program. He previously served as a federal administrative law hearing officer for the U.S. Department of Labor, the federal department which actually hears claims under the Longshore and Harbor Workers' Compensation Act and the Defense Base Act. Professor Helsing also has over 8 years of experience at Florida Coastal School of Law as an academic success counselor and a bar coach, where he has advised students. He also has taught courses at Florida Coastal School of Law on multi-state essay exam writing and multi-state performance testing skills and strategies. We are confident that you will find his presentation today on the bar exam to be extremely informative and an excellent first step towards helping you plan ahead for a U.S. bar exam. So without further ado, I will turn things over to Professor Helsing.
Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the bar exam in the United States. Just a quick overview, just to get you an idea what it might look like. All right, one of my favorite things to talk about. So one of the first things we want to talk about is planning and organizing for the bar exam. This is a long-term project. This is not something that you pick up and can do within, say, 2-3 months. This is something we want to look at for going maybe a year out, right? One of the first things to know about the bar exam in the United States is it's not uniform throughout the bar exam, or throughout the United States. So every state has their own requirements and their own ways that they test the bar exam, right? Of course, there are some similarities, right, when we talk about the uniform bar exam, and we're going to get into that. But I just want you to understand from the beginning, if you're interested in one specific state in the United States, you want to focus in on what are that state's requirements for the bar exam so you're prepared for that state's bar exam. So we're talking about that 9 to 12 months out, right? And so really a couple things you want to start with 9 to 12 months out from the bar exam is, number one, you've got to get familiar with the bar exam and for that chosen state and the bar review process, right? It's a whole process for bar review and to know exactly what to expect. So here we're going to look at procedurally and substantively, right? So procedurally, the application and licensing process for that state that you're interested in, bar review courses that are available for your state, and the bar review period, right? Usually it's about a 10-week period before with those bar review courses, but just know a lot of work needs to be front-ended into that before you get into those bar review courses. Remember, it says bar review course, right? It's not bar teaching course, right? They're just reviewing things that they are assuming that you already have a good fundamental understanding of. Now, substantively here, right, we're talking about that understanding of here is the content, the subjects, and the methods of testing, whether it's multiple choice, by essay, or by performance testing that you're going to see on your state bar exam. So 9 to 12 months out, again, right now is the time to really decide if this is a good fit for you, right? If the February exam or the July exam is a better fit for you, right? Because really you're going to be full-time, like I say, with that 10 weeks out, that is a full-time endeavor to prepare for the bar exam. So really you want to take a good, honest look at any family or health issues that might need to be dealt with, financial issues, right? Because most people during that, especially during that final 10-week period, you really don't have time to be working full-time. You need to be preparing for the bar full-time, right? Because remember, I always like to tell my students with the bar exam, it's not you against the bar exam, it's you against everybody else that's taking the bar exam. So you need to be thinking, how do I get that advantage over everybody else, right? And that's through that really diligent studying, making sure you've got that singular focus for the bar exam and really applying yourself. All right, and so here, right, that timing of the bar exam, And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but in July or February. Those are the two times a year that the bar exam is given in the United States. All right, so we started talking about kind of like those licensing requirements. So here, 9 to 12 months out, you want to kind of settle on that state, of course, or you're going to take the bar exam, and you want to look at that state's licensing entity, right? Usually, right, the bar association for that state to determine the following, right? So what are the requirements for admission, especially admission for foreign law students, all right? Every state's a little bit different on that, all right? Character and fitness, right? So you want to make sure you get that submitted early so you can resolve any character and fitness matters well before you seek admission, right? They're going to look at any criminal background, any financial problems, those type of things, right? Because remember, as an attorney, you're a fiduciary for your clients, right? You've got control of their proceeds a lot of times. So you really have to, they want to make sure that you don't have any like embezzlement type of charges, anything that go toward untrustworthiness or dishonesty in your past, all right? And it can be really complicated. It can require you getting a lot of information, right? Especially for a foreign student, right? You might need to get your driver's licenses or your driver's record for many different countries. I remember when I took the bar exam, I had to get I lived in Germany for a while, so I had to get my records from Germany, and that took quite a while. So you want to be looking at that and getting that resolved as early as possible. Seeing what all is required in the application packet and forms, any application fees. It can be expensive. It's expensive to take the bar exam. That's why you want to make sure you pass it that first time, right? You can't afford to take it twice. Any of those filing deadlines and testing accommodations. And I'm going to show you where to be able to find that information here as we go along. All right, and here is where you're going to find all that information. This is going to be, if you go to the NCBEX, National Conference of Bar Examiners, these are the people that actually write the multi-state bar exam, and also the multi-state essay exam and the multi-state performance test. So they've got a lot of really good information on their website, and that's what we're going to kind of take a look at their website today. So if you look here, and you'll have access to the PowerPoint, of course, you can go in there and you can see this bar admission guide, right? And this has a lot of really good information, and it has it for every state. You can look at every state, what those bar admissions requirements are for every state. All right, and so just looking here at some of that information that I talked about here, right? You can see here, chart 1 is basic information, right? Chart 2 has those character and fitness determinations telling you what that you need to submit for those bar exams. Eligibility as far as legal education, right? Whether that state will accept like a legal education from foreign jurisdictions. Additional, and so there you can see that, foreign law school graduates. So definitely take a look at that. If you're one of the foreign law school graduates, you want to have kind of heads up on what's going to be required of you when this time comes. So there you can see it has most of those things we talked about there, grading, scoring, admission by transferred scores, those type of things. But those basic ones are what I want you to kind of focus in on for right now. All right, at the end of that directory too, this is where you can get in touch with every one of the state bar admission offices. All right, so just having a page here to kind of show you what that looks like. That's at the end of this this guide that they put out there. And you can see it also gives you the web address, contact information, telephone numbers, and addresses. And so there you can go and look at that for that specific state that you're interested in. All right, so continuing 9 to 12 months out from the bar exam, you need to determine whether just your jurisdiction that you've chosen requires you to take the multi-state professional responsibility exam. You want to try and take this multi-state professional responsibility exam. If it's required, you want to take that before you take the bar exam, if at all possible, right? So you can look at your jurisdiction for the required passing score. Let me just say, too, this is about ethics, right? It talks about issues with a lawyer's ethics. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the multi-state professional responsibility exam. It's not talking about those substantive areas like contracts, torts, property. Those are the bar exam. What we're just talking about here is a separate exam that tests ethics, all right? So you want to look for your jurisdiction to see what is the required passing score, when you must pass the MPRE in relation to the bar exam. Usually, right, it has to be within at least about a 2-year window, right? But every state can be different with that. And select when you will take that MPRE. Like I say, it's good to knock that out before you take the bar exam. You can also sit for the MPRE while you're still in law school. So don't be thinking that you have to have graduated law school to take the MPRE, right? You can still take the MPRE even without having graduated from law school. And then you determine the application deadline and then choose an MPRE review course. All right, so here is a map that shows us all the jurisdictions that require the MPRE, right? And so we can see it's pretty much everybody, right? Except for Wisconsin and Maryland and Puerto Rico, all right? So like I say, look at it for your particular jurisdiction that you're looking at and make sure you try and get that out of the way before you get into the bar exam. All right, so here, just kind of wrapping this up about what we've talked about. So the multi-state professional responsibility exam, it's a 2-hour, 60-question, multiple choice exam developed by the National Conference of Bar Examiners that's administered 3 times per year, right? The bar exam is 2 times a year. The MPRE is 3 times a year. And it's required for admission to the bars of all but 3 U.S. jurisdictions. And those, like we saw on the map, are Maryland, Wisconsin, and Puerto Rico. And in addition, we can see here Connecticut and New Jersey accept successful completion of a law school course on professional responsibility in lieu of a passing score on the MPRE. And so there you can see why it's so important that you go in there and really research those specific states that you're interested in practicing law in. All right, so here just that purpose of the MPRE, the purpose of the MPRE is to measure examinees' knowledge and understanding of the established standards related to the professional conduct of lawyers. The MPRE is not a test to determine an individual's personal ethical values, right? But rather, excuse me, your personal ethical, rather lawyers serve in many capacities, right? For example, as judge, advocates, counselors, and other roles, right? Remember, we talked about fiduciaries for your clients' monies, right? The law governing the conduct of lawyers in these roles is applied in disciplinary and bar admission procedures and by courts in dealing with issues of appearance, representation, privilege, disqualification, and contempt or other censures, and in lawsuits seeking to establish liability for malpractice and other civil or criminal wrongs committed by a lawyer while acting in a professional capacity. All right, so one of the things that we've got there for you to download is an MPRE subject matter outline, all right? I've got mine right here, right? And just note, right, that basically tells you the 12 areas that are subject to testing on the MPRE. We don't really have time to go through each one of those, but right, like we talked about it, it's those different roles of lawyers and just kind of those ethical type of issues that might come up in representation of clients. All right, so now let's take a closer look. We're getting in, right? It's 4 to 6 months out, right? This is kind of crunch time when it comes to the bar exam, right? For a lot of other exams, you might think, oh, wait, I've got plenty of time. 4 to 6 months out from the bar exam is really when we want to be finalizing all our preparation. So here, you can see 4 to 6 months out. You want to select and register with your bar review course and complete early bar preparation. Work with the released essay exams from your jurisdiction to develop your essay writing skills. So that's where I want you to go in there and look into that jurisdiction. And a lot of the time, most of the time, they will have samples right there that you can look and see exactly what kind of essays they've got. Performance test here, right, that you can see is our next one. Practice those released performance tests for your jurisdiction if that component's on your bar exam. And you want to work on those multiple choice test taking skills, right? Because remember, we're really going into that with that multi-state bar exam, which we're going to get to here in a second. That's a 200, right, multiple choice questions there. And you've got really about 1.8 minutes for each one of those questions on there. Just a little under 2 minutes for each one of those questions. So you really want to have those skills down for multiple choice taking. So you want to look at the subject matter outlines from the NCBEX to target study areas. And guess what? You have access to those, so no excuse, right? We've got the MBE subject matter outline and the MEE subject matter outline for you there. And then start studying that black letter law and practicing questions in the area by working through questions from multiple sources. And by multiple sources, I mean, you as a member of the LLM, right, student body here, get access to some fantastic resources, right? You have access to the QBank from Kaplan. They've got excellent questions, and you also have access to the Barbary questions, right? So take advantage of those. You don't want to stick with just one bar prep course, because then you kind of get used to the way they ask their multiple choice questions. You want to kind of mix it up, because you want to be able to really hit it from wherever it's coming from. All right, so now during that bar review time, like I said, it's bar review. They are expecting that you already know all these subjects, right? So like if we talk about during bar review, they'll cover, say, contracts, right? And a lot of students spend a whole year in a contracts class, whereas during bar review, they're going to spend about 2 days on it, right? So that's what I mean. They expect that you've got a good fundamental understanding of all this, and so it's considered bar review. That's why you want to be working on these, getting these subjects down before you get into that bar review time. All right, so the things you want to do during this bar review is make a study schedule and stick to it. That's the important thing. Stick to your study schedule. Review the schedule, though, and make adjustments, right, as needed to allow you adequate time to read and study the outlines, watch the lectures, review your notes, and practice multiple choice and essay questions, right? That's one of the things I think is so critically important for students, is to really practice those essay questions. I guess, you know, I taught the class in that, so I expect, right, the people that do the practice on those essay questions really do well, because that kind of helps you with the multiple choice as well, right? So stay engaged throughout with a singular purpose, right? So determine if you need additional materials to add to your understanding of a subject, right? If you're not understanding, say, rule against perpetuity, something like that, right? Do you need some extra materials to take a look at that? And then review subjects covered earlier in the bar review period every day, and select a different one each day. So as you're going through and like covering a topic, you don't want to forget about those other topics that you've already covered, right? Because remember, it's a 10-week long course, right? So you don't want to look at contracts on that first day and then not see it again until like 2 weeks before the bar exam. You want to keep it going, right? My favorite analogy here is that you got to be like one of those plate spinners, right? You've seen in the circuses, those type of things, where they start working on one plate, right? And they get it going really good. It takes a lot of work to get it balanced and going the speed they need, right? And then they go work on the next plate, right? But every once in a while, they have to come back and tap those plates. It's that same type of a situation. You want to go into the bar exam with all your plates spinning, all right? So that's what I mean about reviewing earlier subjects every single day, so you keep those plates spinning in your head. All right, and then also make sure that you practice the bar exam components under realistic testing conditions. So that means if you've got a multi-state performance test, that you sit down with the practice MPT, multi-state performance test question, and you give yourself, right, the allotted time. It's 90 minutes with the multi-state, right? And with that, they consider 45 minutes preparing, 45 minutes writing, right? So you want to make sure your timing is down, right? And like I talked about that timing with multiple choice, you have to be very quick, right? So be thinking, so you want to work with that timing where you're thinking about 1.8 minutes for every multiple choice question. All right, so now let's talk about the multi-state bar exam, all right? That's kind of the big daddy, right? Given in pretty much every state except for Louisiana, where Louisiana, if you're not aware, in the United States, they kind of come from a civil law background with the French that settled in Louisiana. So they kind of take their own approach to the bar exam, but every other state you've got requires the multi-state bar exam. It's a 6-hour, 200-question, multiple-choice exam, right? That's the one, remember I said, where you're working under those time constraints of about 1.8 minutes for every question. It's developed by the NCBE and administered by user jurisdictions as part of the bar examination on the last Wednesday in February and the last Wednesday in July. Remember we talked about the bar given twice a year, right? And so that's where you can see this multi-state component is given the last Wednesday in February and July. The MBE is only one of a number of measures that a board of bar examiners may use in determining competence to practice, so, right? Each jurisdiction determines its own policy with regard to the relative weight given to the MBE and other scores. Right? The MPRE is a component of the uniform bar examination. We're going to take a closer look at the uniform bar examination here once we finish up with this, right? But if you're in one of those UBE jurisdictions, like Washington is one of the UBE jurisdictions, those jurisdictions, right, they weight the MBE component as 50% of the exam. All right, and there we can see the jurisdictions that require it, right? And we can see there we don't have Louisiana or, of course, or Puerto Rico, I should point out. All right, so here are the subjects that are on the MBE exam. All right, and you need to have these down cold, I tell people, right? You got to have these down solid. It's civil procedure, constitutional law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, real property, and torts. All right, and so we've now, like we said, we've got that subject matter outline for you on the MBE. And one thing I want to point out to you on this, it's kind of really interesting, or it's very important that you read the front part of it. Here you can see civil procedure, right? Where it says, note, examinees are to assume the application of the federal rules of civil procedure as currently in effect and the sections of Title 28 of the U.S. Code pertaining to trial and appellate jurisdiction, venue, and transfer. But then they also tell you the weighting here, right? They tell you approximately 2/3 of the civil procedures on the MBE will be based on categories 1, 3, and 5, right? And approximately 1/3 will be based on the remaining categories. So it tells you within those subject matters where you even need to put your focus, all right? Because that is how they're going to be testing those certain areas, all right? And so they tell you which areas are more important and which are, right, more focus on the MBE. So, right, constitutional law is another one, right, where they tell you right there that, right, half the questions are based on category 4 there, right, and that's your individual rights. So go ahead and take a look at that. But like I say, with this MBE subject matter outline, pay particular attention to that note at the beginning. All right, so now moving on to the uniform bar exam. Right, the uniform bar exam is coordinated by the NCBE and is composed of the multi-state essay exam, the MEE, 2 multi-state performances test, MPTs, and the multi-state bar exam. All right, it is uniformly administered, graded, and scored by user jurisdiction and results in portable score that can be transferred to other UBE jurisdictions, right? So, but you want to look for each one of those jurisdictions, right? Because they've got different requirements for the UBE. So the UBE is administered over 2 days, with the MBE given on the last Wednesday of February and July, and the MEE and MPT components given on the Tuesday prior to that, right? Jurisdictions that use the UBE may also require applicants to complete a jurisdiction-specific educational component and or pass a test on jurisdiction-specific law in addition to passing the UBE. Like New York just went to the UBE, right? But they still require a state component that has to do with their civil and criminal procedure. All right, so let's take a look at a map of the UBE jurisdictions right now. There we can see, like we talked about, there's Washington, there's New York, and there are all those other ones. Like I say, you need to look at that specific jurisdiction, though, to tell you exactly what those UBE requirements are. So, like we talked about, they've got different policies. Why it's so important? Because here's areas where the UBE can be different by different jurisdictions, right? So we can see while it's uniformly administered, graded, and scored by user jurisdictions, they do this independently. They decide who may sit for the bar exam and who will be admitted to practice, right? Very important for anybody coming from, right, a foreign student coming to the United States. Determine those underlying educational requirements for their jurisdiction. They make all the character and fitness decisions. They set their own policies regarding the number of times applicants may retake the bar examination. They make ADA decisions. ADA is the American with Disability Act, and that is for anybody with accommodations that might need accommodations. They are the ones that grade the essays and the performance test. They set their own pre-release regarding policies, right? And they assessed candidate knowledge of jurisdiction-specific content through a separate test. Remember, I've mentioned New York has their own separate test that they give as far as procedural issues or some combination if they choose. And they can accept MBE score earned in a previous examination or concurrently in another jurisdiction for purposes of making local admission decisions if they wish. Right? So note that you can sit for all portions of the UBE in the same UBE jurisdiction and in the same administration in order to earn a portable UBE score. And every state sets their own passing score. So, right? So even though it's a uniform bar exam, you still have different passing scores among these states. So that's why you still need to look, even though it's the UBE, you still need to look at that state-specific jurisdiction rules, and they determine how long incoming UBE scores will be accepted. All right, so let's look at the state components now of the bar exam, right? That was the multi-state, right? We've got the multi-state we talked about, the 200-question multi-state multiple choice questions, and with the UBE. Now let's take a look at some of the state components of the exam, right? Again, it's going to be different. Every state makes their own determination. It could be a combination of these three, right? So it could be essay questions. It might be from the multi-state essay exam, or it can be state-specific essays, right? Even some states, right, that have their own essays, right, sometimes they will use those ones from the multi-state essay. So multiple choice questions, right? Those are state-specific multiple choice questions, right? Florida is one of those where it's got state-specific multiple choice questions. And then performance testing, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that briefly here, but here we can see they either use the multi-state performance test or a state-specific performance test. All right, so let's start with that multi-state essay exam, all right? So this is what you use if you're in a UBE jurisdiction or if you're in one of those jurisdictions that uses the multi-state essay exam in their bar exam. It's developed by the NCBE and consists of 6 30-minute questions, right? So you got to be moving through those fast. You've got 3 hours and 6 30-minute questions. It's administered by user jurisdictions as part of the bar exam on the Tuesday before the last Wednesday in February and July of each year, right, where we talked about those state-specific areas, right? And just note it's only one of the measures that they may use, right? Each jurisdiction grades the MEE and determines its own policy with regard to the relative weight given to the MEE and other scores. However, if you're in a UBE jurisdiction, the weight the MEE component is 30%. So remember, 50% multi-state bar exam, 30% for these essays. All right, so what are they going to be testing you with these essays? Like I said, they're 30 minutes, so you've got to be real fast with them. So the purpose of the MEE is to test the examinee's ability to identify legal issues raised by a hypothetical factual situation and to be able to separate material which is relevant from that which is not relevant, right? And present a reasoned analysis of the relevant issues in a clear, concise, and well-organized composition. I always tell people it's 30 minutes. Make sure you spend about that first 5-7 minutes really drafting out your answer, really getting a good idea what you're going to do before you start to write it. You need to have a good outline to be able to follow through if you're going to stay on task and stay focused. And you need to demonstrate an understanding of the fundamental legal principles that are relevant to the probable solution of the issues raised by the factual situation. Right? The primary distinction between the MEE and the MPRE is that the MEE requires the examinee to demonstrate an ability to commute effectively in writing. And you can usually do that either by typing or writing longhand. Just make sure that you watch for those jurisdictions, because if you want to type, you usually have to put that in advance and register in advance for your computer. All right, and so here we can see MEE is administered in all these jurisdictions. All right, so looking at those MEE subjects tested, here we've got your MEE subject matter outline that you can take a look at with this, right? There you can see the areas tested are business associations, civil procedure, and conflict of laws. Conflict of laws will always be kind of part of another question. You won't get a separate conflict of laws question. Constitutional law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, family law, secured transactions, torts, trust and estates, right? So you can see there, it's pretty much your MBE subjects plus a few more. All right, and there is that MEE subject matter outline. Of course, this doesn't have that great little note like the MBE one where it tells you where to focus your attention, but this is a great one, so you're prepared for everything that they can throw at you, right? That's what you got to be ready for. You got to be ready for anything that they throw at you on the bar exam. Well, now let's take a look at the California bar exam, right? They're a little bit different, and I know a lot of students are looking at the California bar exam. Here are the areas that are tested on the California bar exam on their essays. The essays for the California bar exam, which they do not use the multi-state essays, right? California writes their own, right? So they use business associations, civil procedure, community property, constitutional law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, professional responsibility, real property, remedies, torts, trust, and wills and succession, right? And remember, you've got to be ready to write an essay on each one of those, not answer multiple choice questions. So here, just breaking down the California bar exam a little bit more for you, right? Just know that California has three parts to it. The 6 essay questions we talked about, right? The multi-state bar exam, right? That 200 multiple choice question, and 2 performance tests, right? Each session of the exam is 3 hours. And this table shows the examination schedule for this coming February. All right, so you can see on Tuesday, you've got the exams, right? You've got here, you've got the essays 1, 2, and 3 on Tuesday morning and a performance test in the afternoon. And then on Wednesday, you've got 100 multiple choice in the morning, 100 multiple choice in the afternoon. And California's a 3-day exam, right? Florida's 2, right? The UBE we talked about is 2, right? Here, California's 3. Several states are 3-day exams. And here you can see essays 4, 5, and 6 are on Thursday, and performance test B on the afternoon of Thursday. So here we can see, right, with performance testing, it's developed by the NCBE and consists of 2 90-minute items. It's administered by user as part of the bar exam on the Tuesday before last Wednesday, right, in July and February, right? And user jurisdictions may select one or both of the MT to include as part of their bar exam, right? And so jurisdictions that administer the uniform bar exam use both MPTs, right? You'll have 2 of those, all right? And if you are in one of those UBE jurisdictions, the MPT component counts for 20%, right? So just adding that up, we have the MBE is 50%, the MEE is 30%, and now the MPT is 20%. All right, so performance testing designed to test an examinee's ability to use fundamental lawyering skills in a realistic situation and complete a task that a beginning lawyer should be able to accomplish, right? They'll ask you to write a memo or something that any, right, the beginning associate would be doing in a law firm. Right? So it's designed to evaluate certain fundamental skills lawyers are expected to demonstrate regarding the area of law in which the skills are applied, right? And I think one of the big things about those is how good are you at communicating the law to your client, right? That's what they want to see here. All right, and so here we can see what the states that administer the MPT. Like I say, this is a good place to go to get an idea of what is jurisdiction required. So just to break down the multi-state performance test a little bit here, right? We talked about that. It's 2 90-minute items, right? And so the materials for each include a file and a library. You're going to have a file. It's going to consist of source documents containing all the facts of the case. The specific assignment the examinee is to complete is described in a memorandum from a supervising attorney, right? You get your marching orders, right? And the file might also include transcripts of interviews, depositions, hearings or trials, pleadings, correspondence, client, anything, right? All these type of things, right? So everything might be relevant as well as irrelevant facts are sometimes included. So sometimes the facts are ambiguous, incomplete, or even conflicting, right? As in practice, a client or a supervising attorney's version of events may be incomplete or unreliable, right? So the examiners expect you to recognize when the facts are inconsistent or if they're missing, and they're expected to identify sources of additional facts, right? Like I said, they're seeing if you can do the thinking of a lawyer. Now, the library, that contains the cases, the statutes, the regulations or rule, the controlling authority, right? Some of which may or may not be relevant to the assigned lawyering task. Right? The examinee is expected to extract from the library the legal principles necessary to analyze the problem and perform the task, right? That's why this is so important. You get used to practicing this and getting good at it, right? It's not a test of substantive law, right? The library provides sufficient substantive information to complete the task. So here's what it requires of you as the examinee. All right, number one, you need to sort the factual materials and separate those relevant from irrelevant facts. You need to analyze that statutory case and administrative materials for applicable principles of law to apply. And then apply the relevant law to the relevant facts in a manner likely to resolve a client's problem, right? And identify and resolve ethical dilemmas when they present them, right? And communicate effectively in writing, right? Like I said, how good are you at explaining the law to your client, right? And complete that lawyering task within the time constraint. Time constraints are huge on the bar exam. All right, so here we can see They have all sorts of tasks that they give you. If you get under there and you don't recognize it, you get it and you say, hey, I've never done a will before, that type of thing. Don't worry. Go to that library, right? They'll show you some things, right? In that file, they might show you sample wills, those type of things. Just remember, you're not required, right? It's not testing your substantive knowledge. It's testing your ability, right, to be able to go in there and analyze and go through and filter out all that information and get a good answer to your client usually, right? So here we can see all the different ways, right? They might have you do a persuasive memorandum or brief, statement of facts, contract, a will, a counseling plan, a divorce, those type of things. All right, so California, specifically, I want to talk about that quickly because that's changing, all right? So February to July, this is going to change. They have a jurisdiction-specific performance test, right? February will be the last exam where California has 2 3-hour performance test exams, right? In July, they're adopting a new format with a single 90-minute performance test exam. They're not using the MPT, but using a jurisdiction-specific exam. So until then, right, we don't really know what to practice with until there's right, till we see what they're going to put in there. Until then, you should practice using the MPTs if you're going to be taking the California bar exam in California in July. All right, so common mistakes. I want to hurry through these real quickly here, right? Common mistakes, bar examiners, is not studying, right? Not taking it seriously, right? And letting that time slip away. Working while studying, adopting a passive study approach. You've got to be, this is all on you, right? You can't just sit back and watch things. You got to get in there and be interactive with it. Skimming the rules or principles, you need to know those down cold, right? Letting negativity get the best of you. It's kind of an up and down type of thing with bar exam. You've got to learn to go with the flow and just keep your eye on the prize. And then failing to create specific exam strategies and tactics, right? And then test-taking judgment errors, right? Getting in there and, right, what we're talking about there is your timing issues, those type of things. And then here are some qualities we see in successful bar exam takers, right? That they work on their critical thinking, reading, and writing skills. Answering the question asked. Trust me, if I could get everybody to just answer the question.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
And then a disciplined approach to preparing, remove those temptations, right? That work, those type of, dedicate a study space, treat bar prep as if it's your first legal job, right? And manage your time effectively and poise, go in there, right? Go in there like you own it because you did all the preparation you need to do. So learn the frameworks and the protocols in the law, practice that reading critically, apply active studying techniques, aim for that mastery by the time you get to the final few weeks. Practice thinking out loud. I think that helps a lot. And it's repetition, 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 and practice, 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 and keeping your focus.